Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another Sigmalive Hangout. Today we're discussing with Poumpouras, a financial crime specialist, of course, on the topic of financial crime. What brings you to Cyprus?
Well, thank you for having me here today. First, I was invited to come to Cyprus by the Constantian Institute, and they're a criminology institute here in Cyprus. And they were putting together, I was informed that they were putting together a financial crime seminar. And from my understanding, it was the first one ever to be put on in Cyprus. And they asked me if I would come over to speak at the conference to discuss some issues because fighting financial crime here in Cyprus and dealing with corruption has become a really important topic of agenda here now.
Your contribution to the seminar, of course, was of capital essence because you're a true specialist on the topic. But I'd like to tell our viewers what makes you an actual specialist on financial crime.
Sure. Well, I'm a former special agent with the U.S. Secret Service, and one of our jurisdictions, most people think that when you're a Secret Service agent, all you do is protect the president, but we actually have an investigative jurisdiction and we investigate financial crimes. And I've worked many financial crimes cases throughout my career, both as a caseworker, as an investigator, and as an interviewer, and done interrogations and polygraphs, actually, of individuals who have committed these crimes. And even now today, when I work in the news as a national contributor, many of the topics I do discuss are related in the crime world and also cover financial crimes.
And throughout the years that you've been dealing with this subject matter, have you seen that financial crime has been increasing during the years?
Yeah. So it's two things. One, it's always been around, but we never really paid attention to it because we were too worried about, and this is in many parts of the world, to include the United States, we're worried about rape, murder. We were concerned more with the violent crimes. And we didn't really pay attention to white-collar crime, as we call it, because it was like the businessman's crime. And we're thinking, well, it's not really hurting the people, it's just hurting the companies and whatever. But then as time went on, we started seeing that financial crimes had a bigger and bigger impact. And in the US, our first big one was Bernie Madoff. When Bernie Madoff, just made off with millions and millions and millions of dollars, and just people trusted him and invested in him. And then we started to see the consequences of financial crime. And we started to shift our perception, saying, we need to pay more attention to it. And then also now, because the world's become more global, like it's gotten smaller, you're not just being victimized by the people in your own country. Financial crime is committed from country to country. So I can even be somewhere in Russia and just at home in front of my computer, using the network and the people that I know, I can commit crime in a completely different country. And so that impact has greatly escalated. And we use economic, you and I were discussing earlier, like governments and countries and businesses now use money, use finances as a way as a warfare, so to speak, with different people.
That was a point I actually wanted to make, how money has become the new nuclear weapon in governments' hands, because we see them playing with financial embargoes and sanctions and giving out money in countries that they want to get things done as well. We see it becoming the weapon in governments' hands. Is that the case?
I think it's a different type of warfare. It's not as ugly, right? Because when you're actually in war, you're on the ground, you're fighting, you're physically hurting another human being. And most people, we have a guilty conscience. We don't like to physically hurt people. But when it comes to taking other people's money, or when it comes to using the economy or finances, it doesn't feel as bad. And it's a way to fight people, to fight crime, or to get what you want, to gain influence by holding the purse strings and saying, you know what, I'm not going to give you that aid until you give me what you want. Or, you know what, supporting a coup in a specific country and saying, we support you from behind the scenes. We're not going to get involved, but we want to see you gain power. And you support them through economic ways. Or if there's a country you don't agree with what they're doing, you withhold money, or you create an embargo. You get other countries to say, stop giving money to this country. So you pressure them to give into, what you want, so to speak.
Some analysts say that World War III is already ongoing and it's in financial terms this time. Is it fair to say that they have a valid point?
I don't know about World War III. I hope that's not the case. I don't see that. I think if there was a World War III, we'd really know about it. as we knew with the first one, the second. But there is a different type of warfare, and it's an economic warfare and it's a cyber warfare. Because now it's not just, the actual fighting or the physical contact that we're worried about, but it's using finances to get what you want, and then it's also attacking people through the internet. Since technology, with the explosion of technology, the internet, the smartphones that we have, you can hurt somebody in a different way. I mean, you could, and it's been known, there was something called Stuxnet that was used against one of the countries in the Middle East to literally, it was a virus that was implanted there to bring down their electric grid, to hurt their infrastructure. So now I don't have to maybe bomb you, or I don't have to come attack you, but I can put a virus in your infrastructure where your electricity comes in, and now I can wipe out all the electricity in your city, and I've crippled your city. And in fact, I think it was in 2003, we had a blackout in the northeastern region in New York, and I was an agent at the time. And I remember we weren't sure. We're like, is this terrorism, or did the grid just go down? And so from the beginning, we treated it, until we knew what was going on, as if it was a terrorist attack, because it's just another way to hurt people.
So taking it down a notch from government level to, let's say, business level and people level, you said that the world's becoming smaller. We have cyber crimes now, and cybercrime and financial crime seem to go hand in hand in the last few years. As you said, I could be sitting in front of my computer, have access to your accounts, and then your money goes away. How vulnerable are we to that kind of crime?
You are. Everybody is. Today, everybody is. People that think that they're not, they're disillusioned. First of all, if you have money in a bank, okay, that's likely that bank uses computers, and all that your information, your name, your date of birth is stored on software systems. So if the bank doesn't have proper security measures, their computers get hacked. Maybe they can take your money. If not take your money, a big thing now is identity theft. That's a big thing. I don't need your money. I'll get your name, your date of birth, your ID numbers, whatever ID numbers a specific country has, and I can go open up accounts in your name and commit fraud that way. So you are vulnerable in every which way. If you are operating, if you are living as a civilian in today's environment, you are vulnerable. If you have your phone, your telephone, I call it your surveillance system now. It's not a regular phone. It's your surveillance system. So if somebody wants to find you, they probably can, because of all the geo-tracking, and people think, oh, I'll just turn off my geolocation device. No. Certain people, if they want to find you, they can. They can hack into your phone. They can hack into your computer. It's just you're vulnerable now. I joke around my husband because he'll like to text me, and I don't like to text, because I know once I send something via text, it's there. Even if it's nothing, I want to speak to somebody on the phone. Emails, same thing. And even when you do, people don't realize that you're so vulnerable when you do searches, right? Do you use Google a lot here in Cyprus?
Of course, yeah.
So I say nobody knows you better than Google, because you will ask Google things that you will not ask anybody else. And one of the things we did as investigators is, if I wanted to know people's intentions, especially when we investigated cyber fraud or crime, because you need to prove intent, I would subpoena Google and see, I want to know, this person's search history. I want to know everything they've ever searched. And they'll send me everything you've ever searched. And so people ask Google very intimate questions. And so that's why we always say nobody knows you better than Google.
So a term that we hear a lot more these days is the dark web. What is that? Does that fall into place with what you were saying, that there's a place on the internet that has everything and anything, and you're susceptible to everything because of that?
So there's a dark web. Most people, like the average person, they've heard about it, but they don't use it. The dark web is for your hackers, for your people who really know what they're doing, who people want to go undetected in the internet, for people who want to do nefarious activities, who people want to commit fraud, who people are involved in terrorism. So it's a way to communicate in the web where you're able to somewhat conceal yourself. And that's something that's a bit difficult, because it's a way to do searches, to communicate, also to connect with other individuals who maybe have the same intentions.
It's an underworld society online. But
it's the underground. Yes, exactly.
Since we know about that, how do we allow buying and selling even weapons through the dark web? Because we've heard that as well. Or is that just something
How are you going to track everything? How do you watch everything and everyone? And so it's really become important to work with companies like Facebook, like Twitter, and we see now in the United States there's an issue now between Apple and the FBI, where FBI is telling Apple, could you create an encryption so we can de-encrypt phones so we can get in there and see what's going on? And Apple's saying, no, we want to protect the privacy of our users. And so now we've kind of hit this point, what's the right thing to do? Should we be worried about people's privacy, or should we be helping the FBI, helping these investigators, look into people's phones, look into people's devices, because how are you going to track all that stuff? So if you're smart and you know what you're doing, you can conceal it. So we're still trying to keep up. Although there's organizations like the FBI and investigators, as I used to be, you try to see what's going on, but you can't find everything. And then sometimes there'll be a new form of crime and you'll think, how did they do that?
They're always one step ahead. That's why we're always trying to catch up.
There's more of them than us. There's more of them than us. And the thing with hackers and those, individuals who do these things, they actually don't work by themselves. They have a network. They know each other. So they've created almost like their own units. And so they're working together, and so they're that much more powerful.
So if just a civilian is so vulnerable to all of that that's happening, cyber-wise, financially-wise, security-wise, everything, how do you survive feeling safe in this environment? How do you keep going knowing that at any minute, at any point, I might lose my money, I might lose my identity, I might be a victim of fraud or anything?
Yes, so I think it's two ways. If you're a business or corporation, you should absolutely have an IT specialist. You should have somebody that deals with security. You should have people that put the proper software in your computers, and not just put it in and leave it, like somebody who's there ongoing to deal with problems, because you can get an email with a link on it saying, hi, I have something for you, you forgot to sign this, or somebody can send you an email from an account from someone you already know. So you need to have those measures in place. If you're a business, you have to have that. And many companies don't want to pay for it because they think everything's fine. But the thing with cyber crime, especially in financial crime, sometimes you don't know until it's too late. So you can't see it, and we think, well, if I can't see it, it doesn't exist. But by the time you see it, or the problem happens, it's done. Now, as a person, I think you have to make peace with the fact that you are vulnerable. But we're vulnerable in anything. You can go outside right now and walk, and somebody can, steal my purse. And I live like that. You live with that, understanding that. So I think it's the same thing with fraud. But you also have to have common sense. So one thing is, I tell people with their social media, be careful what you put on social media. Be careful of the things you post, because there's people now, what they'll do is they'll investigate social media. They'll look at someone's account on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter, and a lot of people put out very personal information. That personal information can be used to hack into their computer, to hack into their bank account. Think of some of the security questions you get asked if you ever forget a password. They ask you, what's your pet's name? What's your mother's maiden name? And you can find all this stuff on the internet. Where did you go to high school? What did you study, or where did you vacation? And you've got pictures of your vacation, you've got pictures of your pet, and you're explaining to people who you are. So you make yourself very vulnerable. So I would mitigate what you put out there. And I would also be aware of when you use Wi-Fi, as far as don't use public Wi-Fi networks. I know it's a nice thing to go into a place and say, oh, free Wi-Fi. I had turned that off on my phone. I never have the Wi-Fi roaming. So I only use the Wi-Fi at my house or in a place where I know. So assume you can get hacked everywhere you go. You want to try to minimize things as you can. And then also, some places like Apple, take advantage of those. They'll have classes. Just try to find out what you can about your device, or the devices that you use.
And if you're Google searching everything, Google search about your security as well.
Yes, well, you can Google search your security, but the other thing is should
ways of guarding your security.
Guarding your security. And then, but the other thing is too, keep in mind, whatever you text, whatever you type, whatever you email, whatever picture you take, even if you delete it, it's never gone. It's never gone. People always think, oh, I deleted it from my computer. It is always there. So if you don't want it out there, don't do it. And we've seen leaks with celebrities with photographs of themselves, and people try to bribe individuals, and it still happens. It happens with businesses or people. Just don't take the picture. If you don't ever want it out there, don't take it. Don't do it, you'll be fine. The less you do, the safer you are.
I want to ask so many more things, especially about Cyprus, but unfortunately we're out of time. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your contribution to the seminar. I know we're going to hear a lot of stuff about what happened there in the days to come. We're going to keep an eye out to see what came out of the seminar. And thank you for your insight about how to keep safe.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for watching.